Barakatah Yahweh, Barakatah Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Rakahakwadash, Barakatum. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, glory, and infinite honors to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai. Double honors to the apostles and elders, a great millstone who rule and teach well. In peace and salutations to you sincere Akim out there, pushing this word in truth and sincerity to the four corners of the globe. May you brothers endure until the end. This is the brother Ra'aya with another video, and I'm going to start it off in Matthew chapter 24, verse 6. And this was Yahweh Shai Hamashayak, whom the world ignorantly refers to as so-called Jesus Christ, telling his disciples in the past of the end time signs to look for, to know that his second coming was nigh, the end of the rulership of the heathen nations was at hand, and that the kingdom of heaven, under the true children of Israel, who are known as the so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans today, would be established. But as it says in Romans chapter 15, everything written aforetime was written for our learning. Yahweh Shai was really speaking to his disciples today who are living in these times of the last days, really the last seconds of the last days. And ye shall hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that ye be not troubled, for all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. For nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and there shall be famines and pestilences and earthquakes in divers places. And if you have that spiritual eye salve for understanding, you can see that these end time signs and prophecies are either in the process of taking place or taking place as we speak. And what I'll be dealing with in this video is the wars and rumors of wars. And I'm going to play a little bit of this clip from Full Spectrum Survival's YouTube channel titled Nationwide Warning, Things Are About to Pop Off, Violence Spreading Across the USA. But in this video, the guy at Full Spectrum Survival is talking about how all across the planet, different conflicts are either in the process of erupting or have already erupted. Of course, you've got the war in Ukraine, you've got China and their potential war against Taiwan. You've got situations flaring up between Azerbaijan and Armenia, as well as Turkey and Greece. Wars and rumors of wars. And we truly are living in the last seconds of these last days before Yahweh Shai's second coming, the end of this current age of the rulership of the heathen nations, chiefly under the biblical Edomites, who are known as the so-called white people, and the ushering in of the kingdom of heaven. So like we always tell you sincere Akim out there, now more than ever you should have all 10 toes down in this truth, pushing this word as hard as you possibly can to make your calling and election sure, and to be saved from all these calamities of Jacob's trouble. The famines, the pestilences, the wars, civil war, race wars, martial law, and ultimately the mandatory implementation of the Charagma, which is all quickly coming our way, and which is going to take out a lot of people on this planet as judgment from the Most High for all the wickedness they've been committing. But before I play this clip, this is a fair use copyright disclaimer. I do not own any of the footage in this clip, nor do I stand to gain from it monetarily. It is simply for educational purposes.
I have a strong concern that things are about to get really bad here in the United States of America and in Europe. We run sentiment analysis on social media, and every time we have had a major cataclysmic event on a social level, we have seen a spike in anti-government discontent, malcontent, hatred for our fellow citizens, and we're starting...
I'm gonna actually hit the main point.
...before it can be relieved. And so you have a spike and a Christian very localized, or it could be a little bit Azerbaijan. We have Russia at war. Look at what we're seeing right now. Events here in the United States of America, those are very localized, or it could be a little bit larger and get out of hand, like the riots that we saw just a couple of years ago. What we do have is a world at war. Look at what we're seeing right now. Putin, Russia, Ukraine, NATO, Europe, the United States of America. We have Armenia versus Azerbaijan. We have Russia versus Ukraine. We have China versus Taiwan. We have India versus Pakistan. We have the world is literally at war. And with the world being at war, we start to see a bigger picture materialize. And that materialization is that we are going to be locked deep into this conflict for the next couple of years. Putin
The wars and the rumors of wars
says that unfriendly forces are now beginning to target Russia personally. We, speaking as Russia, must take an initiative in order to succeed in confronting them. Fighting erupted, as you know, yesterday between Armenia and Azerbaijan, the latest flare-up in a decades-long standoff over disputed regions. Now, did you...
Slovakia. Damn ad.
To pay attention here between the correlations of Greece and Turkey, Armenia, Azerbaijan, Russia, Ukraine, China, Taiwan. What do we have here? We have a vying for control over land. Now you might ask yourself, why? Why is this land so important? Why is Taiwan so important to China? Why is Ukraine so important to Russia? Why is the Armenian land so important to Azerbaijan? Why is the conflict between Greece so important to Turkey? It doesn't have to make sense. We are just in a world war. The clashes have raised the prospect of Russia becoming...
The reasons don't have to make sense because it's ultimately the prophecies of Yahweh Bahasham Yahweh Shai taking place before our very eyes in these last seconds of these last days.
Embroiled in another war near its borders, according to military strategists. Each side, of course, blamed the other for the fighting that broke out along their border. It was the worst escalation. Let me tell you the videos that came out of that. There was just a massive amount of artillery being used. Hostilities between the countries since a war over a ceasefire that was brokered by Russia to end large-scale fighting between the two countries' forces. The Prime Minister Pashinyan of Armenia said that 49 of his country's servicemen have died overnight in clashes with the Azerbaijani army. Azerbaijan, the defense ministry, accused Armenia of a number of large-scale provocations that it was forced to retaliate against. I fear that we are witnessing, according to one military strategist and historian, the start of a major military operation between Azerbaijan and Armenia. On Tuesday morning, the Armenian Defense Ministry claimed that armed forces of the opposition country conducted artillery strikes. The strikes included drones, large-caliber firearms fired in the direction of Goris, Jermak, if I'm pronouncing that incorrectly, according to the Armenian Defense Ministry. The Ministry of Defense of Azerbaijan responded with a statement saying that there was a small-scale aim to ensure the security of the border. Does this start to sound familiar to you? The unrest in the regions is decades old. It dates back to the collapse of the Soviet Union, when the region, backed by Armenia, declared independence from Azerbaijan. Azerbaijan had long claimed to retake that territory, which is internationally recognized as Azerbaijani. On Tuesday, Armenia called on Russia to implement a almost 25-year-old defense treaty that stipulates the countries will defend each other's territorial integrity and each other's sovereignty in the event of an attack by a foreign country.
Hey, and Russia helping out Armenia, and that's a part of biblical prophecy as well. This is Ezekiel 38. I'm going to start at verse 1. And the word of Yahweh came unto me, saying, Son of man, set thy face against Gog, which is the biblical name for Russia here, the land of Magog, the chief prince of Meshech and Tubal, and prophesy against him, and say, Thus saith the Lord Yahweh, Behold, I am against thee, O Gog, the chief prince of Meshech and Tubal, and I will turn thee back and put hooks into thy jaws. And that's the Most High putting that old confrontational Soviet Union spirit back onto those Russian Edomites, which we can clearly see with their current military operation in Ukraine, them building up their military assets in that Arctic Ocean region, and them helping Bashar al-Assad in the Syrian civil war, and them working with China to de-dollarize from the U.S., and also them constantly making threats towards the U.S. in the West, saying that they have no reservations about using their nuclear arsenal if the US keeps meddling in their affairs, which ultimately Russia is going to shoot their nuclear missiles onto the United States of America. And I will bring thee forth, and all thine army, horses and horsemen, all of them clothed with all sorts of armor, even a great company with bucklers and shields, all of them handling swords, their military assets, tanks, fighter jets, soldiers, artillery pieces, the S-400, S-300, S-500, and them being brought forth is ultimately down into the Valley of Jehoshaphat, or that Middle Eastern region, for the battle in the Valley of Jehoshaphat, the War of Armageddon, when World War III is truly going to kick off. Verse 5, Persia, which is the ancient name for Iran, Ethiopia, and Libya with them, all of them with shield and helmet. And if you just look at Russia's dealings with these countries, you can see that they do business deals with them, and they are military allies to an extent with them, and it's only going to intensify as we get closer and closer to the end in that battle in the Valley of Jehoshaphat erupting in that Middle Eastern region. Gomer, which is speaking of Turkey and all his bands, and Gomer, or Turkey, is going to turn against the West and ultimately ally themselves with Russia during World War III. The house of Togarmah of the North Quarters and all his bands, and many people with thee. And when we go to Togarmah in the Strongs, it's H 8425.
Strong's H 4825. Togarmah. Togarmah. And second entry.
Togarmah. Thou wilt break her, down in section B, territory settled by the descendants of Togarmah, and it's saying here that the Togarmah was Japheth, which the original Togarmites, or however you would say it, were Japheth, but just like the original inhabitants of that land of Russia were Japhites, they were pushed out of the land and replaced by Edomites, so-called white people. The same with Europe as well. That was originally the landmass of Japheth. Then Esau, beginning with Alexander the Great, who was an Edomite, and the Grecian Empire started taking over, and then it went to the Roman Empire of Edomites that took over, and then the Israelites, more specifically the southern kingdom of the so-called Negroes, took over the Roman Empire and ruled Europe during the Dark Ages. And then during the Renaissance, when the Edomites came back into power, they pushed the Israelites out of that land, and now they're there to this day in that land, calling themselves Europeans, Germans, British, the French. But as it says in in section B, part I, probably the area known as Armenia.
A 25-year-old defense treaty that to retake that territory, which is internationally recognized as Azerbaijani. On Tuesday, Armenia called on Russia to implement a almost 25-year-old defense treaty that stipulates the countries will defend each other's territorial integrity and
the house of Togarmah and his bands. Verse 7, Be thou prepared and prepare for thyself, thou and all thy company that are assembled unto thee, and be thou a guard, an ally, a protector unto them. And we can see how Russia is already being a guard unto nations like Persia and Libya. Russia and Gomer, or Turkey, do deals behind the scenes. And as we just heard, Togarmah, or Armenia, is calling on Russia to come back to a pact from 25 years ago dealing with the Soviet Union, where they would come to Armenia's aid. And it remains to be seen how much Russia will aid Armenia in this new flare-up between Armenia and Azerbaijan. But just know, at the end of the day, when everything's said and done, Gog, or Russia, is going to be a guard unto Togarmah, or Armenia. And these nations are all going to get gathered down into that Middle Eastern region, again, for the battle in the Valley of Jehoshaphat, the War of Armageddon.
and each other's sovereignty in the event of an attack by a foreign country. A decision was made to officially apply to the Russian Federation for the implementation of the provisions of the Treaty of Friendship, cooperation and mutual assistance to the Collective Security Treaty Organization and the United Nations Security Council regarding the aggression against the sovereign territory of the Republic of Armenia. That's a statement directly from the Armenian Prime Minister. The PM is reported to have spoken with U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken, asking for adequate reactions from the international community in response to this. This is against the territorial integrity.
Slacky, another damn ad.
Of Armenia, it is said, the sovereign territory of Armenia. On Monday, Blinken called for an immediate ceasefire. The United States, he says, is deeply concerned about reports along the Armenian border, including reported strikes against settlements, civilian infrastructure. Blinken said that as long as we have made clear there can be, as we have made clear, speaking of the USA, there can be no military solution to the conflict. We urge an end to any military hostilities immediately. Now, them urging an end to it and that actually happening are two different things. We are in a world at war. Greece versus Turkey, Russia versus Ukraine, China versus Taiwan,
wars and rumors
NATO
of
and the United
war.
States versus Russia, Russia versus Poland and other countries. We have a world at war, and we have to do our best to get ready for it. The Taiwan Defense Ministry has said that Taiwan forces have fired upon drones approaching the Kinmen Islands. The ministry stated that the drones left the area after the shots were fired in its direction. The French president has assured the Greek Prime Minister that France has clear and firm support for Greece in the face of Turkey's threats of military confrontation. So now you have a division between NATO members here.
And that's going to further drive a divide between Turkey and those European NATO nations and further push them into the corner of Gog or Russia.
This is going to end poorly. I don't think it can be, a lot of people say, well, maybe this will be averted. Maybe cooler heads will prevail. And I really don't see that as a possibility. I don't know what overcomes the minds of men and women.
Prophecy will not be averted. As it says in Isaiah 55 verse 11, so shall my word be that goeth forth out of my mouth. It shall not return unto me void, but shall accomplish that which I please. Wars and rumors of wars, famines, pestilences, etc., etc. Back in Matthew 24 verse 6, but remember what it says, but the end is not yet. And in verse 8, all these are the beginning of sorrows. We're just in the beginning stages of these different calamities taking place. It's only going to get worse from here on out. World War III is a part of prophecy and will take place, as it says in Revelation 9 verse 12. One woe or destruction is past, referring to World War I, and behold, there come two woes more hereafter, World War II, which is past, and World War III, which is coming. But the main place that World War III will take place in is in that Middle Eastern region, in the Valley of Jehoshaphat, for the battle in the Valley of Jehoshaphat, the War of Armageddon. You have these different conflicts taking place right now, and you may have bush wars and flare-ups here and there, and Abaratazah, that China does go to war against Taiwan, Armenia and Azerbaijan continue to go to war, and these different conflicts increase and further throw this world into chaos. But ultimately, World War III is going to be in that Middle Eastern region. This is Joel chapter 3, verse 9. Proclaim ye this among the Gentiles, the heathen Gentiles. Prepare war with Iran. World War III, the War of Armageddon, the battle in the Valley of Jehoshaphat, nuclear war, because World War III will go nuclear. And the reason I said war with Iran is because that's going to be one of the major flare-ups to lead into the battle in the Valley of Jehoshaphat. And a couple of months ago, you had those 1948ers over in the Holy Land, those Ishes, calling themselves the people of the Most High, which they're not. They're actually Amalekite Edomites, pull a military drill called the Chariots of Fire, where all their different branches of the military simulated an attack against Iran and its proxy forces. And in some other drills, it may even have been a part of that drill, you had some U.S. refueler planes take part with the 1948 Air Force in doing long-distance airstrikes. And then just recently, the 1948ers inked a deal with the U.S. for them to be sold refueling ships to help refuel their jets for possible, though inevitable, long-distance airstrikes against Iran and its assets. Wake up the mighty men. Let all the men of war draw near. Let them come up. You've already got Russian forces in that Middle Eastern region helping Bashar al-Assad. You have the 1948ers and the U.S. with their situation going on in the Middle East, such as the Chariots of Fire, and these different Middle Eastern nations gearing up for an inevitable conflict. Beat your plowshares into swords and your pruning hooks into spears. Let the weak say I am strong. Assemble yourselves and come, all ye heathen. The United States, Russia, China, Iran, Turkey, the 1948ers, Saudi Arabia, these NATO nations, and gather yourselves together round about. Thither cause thy mighty ones to come down, O Yahweh, and those mighty ones are the death angels of the Most High, holding back this great destruction, waiting to get the go-ahead to release it, which is mainly going to happen after the Charagma, the Markoftbeast in Revelation chapter 13, verses 16 to 18, which is the RFID/NFC MICROCHIPIMPLANT is mandatorily implemented. And you can clearly see that with each passing day, we're getting closer and closer to that mandatory implementation. Mainstream news outlets are already starting to talk about the CHIPIMPLANT. Just look it up. Let the heathen be wakened and come up to the valley of Jehoshaphat, which in the Hebrew is Yahweh's Shaphat, or Yahweh's judgment. And the Most High is gathering you heathen nations down into this Middle Eastern region to judge you for afflicting the apple of his eye, the children of Israel, who are again known as the so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans today. And you can read about that in the first couple of verses of this chapter. When you go into that word Shaphat, it means to plead, but it doesn't mean the Most High is coming with a bouquet of roses or a box of chocolates to ask you for his people back. It's going back into vengeance, judgment, to be vindicated, to punish. For there will I sit to judge all the heathen round about, and at the top of that list of the heathens that afflicted the children of Israel, as pursuant to Psalms chapter 83, are you Edomites. Put ye in the sickle, for the harvest is ripe. Come get you down, for the press is full. The fats overflow, for their wickedness is great. Multitudes, multitudes in the valley of decision, for the day of Yahweh is near in the valley of decision. And when we see all these end time signs and prophecies in the process of taking place, or taking place as we speak, that lets us know that the day of Yahweh is very near in the valley of decision, and that our salvation is nearer than when we believed. So that's it with this video. And with this video, I hope you sincere Akim and Akwath were edified. Just keep strong. We're almost out of this final wicked captivity of the heathen nations, chiefly of the Edomites. And as always, I'm going to say Abad Babal, Kwam Yasharala, and until next time, Shalom.